All right, so you're interested in how Europe is preparing for a possible conflict with Russia.
Yeah.
Heavy stuff. And we've got a Newsweek article and even a Reddit thread discussing it.
Oh, wow.
So let's dive deep
Okay.
and see what's really going on beyond the headlines.
Right.
So the Newsweek piece lays it all out there.
Yeah, okay.
You know, European nations, especially those right on Russia's border,
Right.
they are seriously preparing for a potential conflict.
Yeah, the article makes that very clear.
Right.
It seems like officials and experts are saying Russia could be ready for a confrontation
Oh, wow.
within the next decade.
And it's not just talk.
Now.
They're taking some pretty serious measures.
Yeah.
The article mentions these things called dragon's teeth.
I've heard of those.
Yeah, they're basically concrete barriers designed to
Oh.
stop tanks.
Huh, interesting.
They're building those along with bunkers and anti-tank trenches right along the borders.
Really?
Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, all working together on something called the Baltic defense line.
That's impressive.
And then there's Poland,
Right.
investing billions in a fortification project
Wow.
on their border with Kaliningrad.
Gee.
It's called the East Shield.
So it seems like they're really taking this seriously.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
It really is.
I mean, it really shows how important the Baltic states and Kaliningrad are
Yeah, strategically
for
important.
both NATO and Russia.
Yeah.
It's like we're seeing echoes of the Cold War,
Right.
you know?
Like history might be repeating itself.
Where those areas were like these major points of tension.
Exactly. And with the conflict in Ukraine,
Yeah.
it just brings all those tensions back to the surface.
It's not just the military either.
Oh.
The article talks about these mass evacuation plans
Yes.
that they're developing in several countries.
Uh-huh.
Sweden even published a guide for its citizens
For what?
on how to prepare for an armed attack.
Wow.
Like what to do when you hear siren warnings and what they'd be expected to contribute in wartime.
Huh. So they're really thinking this through.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
Lithuania's interior minister is pushing for every local authority
Wow.
to have evacuation plans ready to go.
So they could get everyone out quickly.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The mayor of Vilnius
Okay.
even claims that they have enough underground shelter space
Underground shelter space for work.
for 2 cities worth of people.
Wow. That's amazing.
And then there's the Reddit thread.
Oh, yeah. What are people saying online?
It's wild,
Okay.
like a whirlwind of different reactions.
Okay.
Some users are really worried about Europe's readiness. Others are skeptical.
Yeah, I can see that.
And of course,
Yeah.
you've got that dark humor that
Yeah.
always pops up online
It's a coping
when
mechanism.
things get tense.
Totally.
One comment that stood out to me was,
Oh, yeah. What was it?
in the Netherlands, our soldiers were shouting "pang" because they didn't have ammo to train with.
Oh, wow. That's concerning.
It really highlights a vulnerability there.
Yeah, it does.
Another user pointed out the irony of Germany
Yeah.
being considered a military powerhouse,
Right.
despite not having
Not having what?
a fully equipped military.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's fascinating to see
Yeah,
how people are reacting to all of this.
it really is.
And speaking of military readiness,
Yeah.
some users brought up concerns about ammunition shortages.
Ammunition shortages.
Yeah, specifically in Germany and the UK.
Okay.
They were saying that these countries have limited supplies,
Oh, wow.
which could be a big issue
Yeah.
if a conflict dragged on.
Especially a long-lasting one.
Isn't it kind of unsettling to think about
It is a little bit, yeah.
that these powerful countries like Germany and the UK
Hmm.
being potentially vulnerable
Yeah.
because of something like an ammo shortage?
It really makes you think about their ability to respond
Oh.
if things escalate.
And it highlights the complexities
Yeah.
of modern militaries today.
Mhm.
You know, they rely on these intricate supply chains
Right.
and specialized manufacturing processes.
It's not like they can just ramp up production overnight.
Exactly.
It's-
It takes time. So if even major powers
Yeah.
like Germany and the UK are facing these challenges,
Mhm.
what does that mean for smaller nations
right.
that might be even more reliant on outside support?
That's a crucial question.
It's easy to focus on the big players,
Yeah.
but this potential vulnerability, it extends across all of Europe.
It really creates this complex web
Yeah.
of interdependencies.
Right, and it raises serious questions about their overall preparedness.
Yeah, it does.
We've talked about those anxieties online.
Yeah.
But the Newsweek article also brings up this
Okay.
kind of East-West divide within NATO
Oh, interesting. Tell me more.
when it comes to how much they're spending on defense,
Oh.
how prepared they are.
So some are doing more than others?
It seems like the Baltic states,
Okay.
Poland,
Mm-hmm.
Finland, and Sweden, are kind of taking the lead,
Okay.
while some Western European countries
I know.
are lagging behind.
Huh. That's interesting.
What do you make of that discrepancy?
Well, there are probably a few factors at play here.
Like what?
The countries closer to Russia's borders,
Yeah.
they naturally feel a more immediate sense of threat.
Right. They're right there.
They also have this vivid historical memory
Oh, yeah.
of Russian
And
aggression.
that definitely shapes their outlook.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
these countries often have smaller,
Okay.
more agile economies,
Mhm.
so they can adapt faster to these changing security needs.
That makes sense.
The article mentions that Estonia's defense spending...
Estonia's defense spending
Yeah.
is about 3.4% of its GDP.
3.4%.
Wow. With plans to bump it up to 3.7% by 2026.
That's a significant increase.
Lithuania is aiming for 3% by 2025,
Okay.
and Poland wants to hit a whopping 5% in 2025.
5%. Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a stark contrast to Germany and the UK.
Who are still trying to meet that NATO target of 2%.
The 2% target.
Yeah. Interesting. Do you think this difference in spending reflects a fundamental difference in how these countries view the threat from Russia?
It's certainly possible.
Yeah.
The countries that are really increasing their spending
Right.
seem to be taking a proactive approach,
Okay.
prioritizing their own defense capabilities. Even if it means going above and beyond those agreed upon targets,
Right.
while those just striving to meet the 2%
Yeah.
might be operating with different calculations,
Like what?
potentially relying more on those collective defense mechanisms within NATO,
Okay.
or maybe downplaying the immediacy of the threat.
So they're not as worried?
Maybe not as worried, or maybe they just have different priorities.
And this whole situation,
Yeah.
it really shines a light on the role of the U.S. military-industrial complex.
Oh, how so?
There's a lot of talk on Reddit about how Europe has become so reliant
Relying on what?
on American weapons and technology. Oh, I see.
Which could be a problem
A problem.
if things escalate with Russia.
That makes sense.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's a valid concern for sure.
Okay.
Relying too heavily on any single supplier,
Right?
especially during a potential conflict,
Yeah,
creates strategic vulnerabilities.
it does.
It's interesting to see how this current situation
Wow.
is prompting a reassessment
A reassessment of what?
of Europe's own defense industrial capabilities.
So they want to be more self-sufficient.
Exactly. There's this growing sense that they need to be able to produce their own weapons
Yeah.
and technology.
One Reddit user asked,
What did they ask?
if WW3 happens, are we still going to think about our economy and keep trading with Russia?
Oh, wow. It's a big question.
Yeah, it seems simple,
Mm-hmm.
but it gets at the heart of this complex relationship
Yeah,
between economics and security.
it really does.
So we've got these military preparations, those anxieties bubbling up online,
Mm-hmm.
and a potential East-West divide within NATO.
It's a lot.
It is a lot to process.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most important takeaway for our listener so far?
I think the key takeaway here is that Europe is at a crossroads.
Okay.
This situation with Russia has forced them to confront some uncomfortable realities
Okay.
about their defense capabilities, their reliance on external partners,
Yeah.
and the very real possibility
Right.
of a major conflict.
That's a lot to grapple with.
It really is.
And they're trying to do it while also navigating the complexities of this globalized world
Yeah.
where economics and security are just so intertwined.
Absolutely.
It's fascinating.
It really is.
You mentioned historical parallels earlier.
Yeah.
And there's definitely this sense of
I noticed that too.
Cold War nostalgia
Yeah.
in the Reddit thread. People are comparing it to the arms race, the propaganda,
Right.
that constant fear of nuclear war.
Yeah, like we're going back in time.
It feels like we're revisiting a past
Yeah.
we thought we'd left behind.
It's interesting, though.
Yeah.
Analogies can be helpful
Okay.
for understanding these complex situations.
Right.
But we have to be careful with them, too.
Oh, why is that?
The world has changed a lot since the Cold War.
That's true.
There are some similarities to what's happening now,
Okay.
but there are also big differences.
Like what?
For one thing,
Yeah.
the ideological divide
No,
between
aren't-
East and West.
Between, like, the communists and the capitalists?
Exactly. it's not as stark as it was back then.
True, and the globalized economy, and it creates a whole new set of dependencies and vulnerabilities.
Guys, I just didn't exist during the Cold War.
It's a different world. Back then, it was more about two opposing blocks vying for power.
Right.
Now it's so much more nuanced with all these economic ties.
It complicates things.
And we can't forget about the technological advancements.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
That have completely changed warfare, right? Like artificial intelligence, cyber warfare, hypersonic missiles.
Those are game changers.
They really are.
They introduce a level of complexity and unpredictability
that we just didn't see during the Cold War.
It's almost like we're trying to fight a two-front war.
A two-front war.
One against a potential physical invasion. And another against...
Against what?
This constant barrage of information warfare.
Oh, that's a good point.
And it's not just governments.
No.
As we saw in that Reddit thread,
right.
Ordinary citizens are wrestling with this too.
Yeah, trying to make sense of it all.
Those voices are important.
They are.
It's crucial to understand the human impact.
The human impact of what?
These preparations,
right.
The anxieties they generate, the difficult questions they raise.
Absolutely. These aren't just abstract geopolitical maneuvers.
No.
They're decisions that affect real people's lives.
Speaking of anxieties, there's one issue that keeps popping up that nobody seems to want to address directly.
Oh, what is it?
Nuclear weapons.
Oh, yeah, the big one.
It's like the elephant in the room.
Right. Everyone's trying to ignore it.
During the Cold War, the threat of mutually assured destruction, it acted as a deterrent.
Right. Nobody wanted to start a nuclear war.
But today, with new actors and the potential for miscalculation...
Right. Someone could make a mistake.
It feels like that safety net might be fraying a bit.
That's a chilling thought.
It is.
It really underscores the urgency.
The urgency of what?
Of finding peaceful solutions to these conflicts.
I can't let things escalate.
Exactly. The stakes are so high. And the potential consequences.
Miscalculation or escalation.
Are terrifying.
It's scary to think about it.
It's a stark reminder. That diplomacy, communication, and a commitment to international cooperation.
Working together.
Yeah. Those are more important than ever.
We've talked about Europe ramping up its defenses, but the article also pointed out that some Western European countries seem to be lagging behind.
Lagging behind in what?
When it comes to meeting those NATO defense spending targets.
Oh, those targets?
It almost feels like some countries are more willing to shoulder the burden than others.
Yeah, that's definitely a point of tension.
Does this disparity in commitment create a weakness?
A weakness where...
In the alliance.
Some people would say yes. That those lagging behind are basically free riding.
Free ride?
Yeah, benefiting from the security provided by others without really pulling their weight.
So they're not contributing enough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that can breed resentment.
I could see that.
And undermine that sense of unity.
That shared purpose.
Right. That's so essential.
For an effective alliance.
If they don't trust each other.
Yeah.
It's not going to work.
But couldn't you also argue?
You could.
That different countries face different threats and have different capabilities.
It might not be as simple as just looking at who's spending the most.
Maybe it's more complicated than that.
It could be. Yeah. The security needs aren't uniform across Europe.
Right.
Geography, history, economic realities.
All those things play a role.
Exactly. They shape defense priorities.
But that perception of an unequal burden sharing, it can still be damaging to the alliance's cohesion.
It's essential for those NATO members to talk openly and honestly.
Their commitments and capabilities.
Yeah, to make sure everyone feels...
Like they're contributing fairly.
Exactly.
And how does the U.S. factor into all of this?
That's a big question.
We've talked about Europe's reliance on American weapons technology.
Right.
But there's also the question of America's commitment to NATO.
Yeah. Would they really risk a direct confrontation
with Russia,
to defend Europe?
That's the million-dollar question. It is. The U.S. has said they're committed to NATO, but there are always doubts.
Especially now.
And any U.S. involvement, it could escalate the conflict.
To a global scale.
So it's not just about military hardware and spending.
It's bigger than that.
It's also about trust, shared values, and a willingness to stand together.
When things get tough.
It seems like NATO is facing a real test.
A test of what?
Of its unity and its resolve.
Yeah. This situation is forcing NATO to reevaluate.
Reevaluate what?
Its purpose. Its strategies. and its ability to respond.
To respond to what?
To the challenges of this rapidly changing world.
So it's not just a military alliance anymore.
Not anymore.
It's also a political and economic alliance.
Which makes things
complex.
Way more complex.
That's a lot for any alliance to handle.
It really is.
But going back to the individual level,
okay,
it seems like a lot of people are grappling with these really profound questions.
Profound questions about
about the future.
Yeah, like what happens next?
If another large-scale war broke out in Europe.
It's hard to imagine.
What would that mean for the world?
Right.
Well, what would that mean for them personally?
It's hard to even fathom the consequences. The world is so interconnected now.
Right.
The ripple effects would be everywhere.
Economically, socially, politically.
It would be devastating.
And then there's the psychological toll.
Oh, yeah.
That feeling of constant fear and uncertainty.
It can be paralyzing.
We saw hints of that in the Reddit thread.
Right. People making jokes.
To cope with their anxiety.
Humor can be a powerful defense mechanism.
It can.
It's a way to process difficult emotions.
Okay.
And find those moments of lightness.
Yeah.
But it's also a reminder.
A reminder of what?
That these aren't just abstract geopolitical issues.
Right.
They have a real impact on people's lives.
Yeah.
And their mental well-being.
It seems like we've gone from discussing concrete military preparations to contemplating the potential unraveling of the global order.
It's a pretty stark shift. But that's the reality of the situation.
It is.
There's potential for conflict in Europe.
Yeah.
It's not just a regional issue.
It has global implications.
Absolutely. It forces us to grapple with these fundamental questions.
Questions about what?
About human nature.
Okay.
About the fragility of peace.
Right.
And about the choices we make.
The choices we make.
Yeah, as individuals and as societies.
It seems like there's this real tension between this awareness of the potential for conflict and the desire to just maintain a sense of normalcy.
Right. Like everything's fine.
People are going about their daily lives.
That's just trying to focus on the present.
While this cloud of uncertainty hangs over everything.
It's a natural human response.
It is.
We all need stability, predictability.
We don't want to live in a constant state of anxiety.
Exactly. But it's important to remember.
To remember what?
That ignoring the problem won't make it go away.
So how do we strike that balance?
That's the question.
How do we stay informed and engaged without just succumbing to fear and paralysis?
Like a delicate dance.
It is.
I think it starts with recognizing that we have agency.
Agency.
Yeah, we can choose to educate ourselves about these complex issues.
We can learn more.
We can engage in constructive dialogue.
Talk to each other.
Exactly. We can advocate for policies that promote peace and stability.
So we can actually do something.
We can.
Instead of just passively absorbing the news and reacting with fear or denial.
We can be active participants.
We can shape the narrative.
Exactly.
Influence the outcome.
It's not about being naive or ignoring the risks.
Right.
But it's about focusing on what we can control.
What we can actually do.
Yeah, to make a positive difference.
This conversation has given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
I'm curious what our listener is taking away from this.
I hope it's encouraged them to think critically about the information they're consuming, to question assumptions, and to have thoughtful discussions.
With other people.
We can't afford to be passive observers.
In a world facing such huge challenges.
But we need to be informed, engaged, and willing to challenge the status quo.
Speaking of challenging the status quo. There's one aspect of this situation that we haven't really touched on yet.
What's that?
The moral and ethical implications of preparing for war.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It is a difficult topic.
It is.
But it deserves our attention. It feels like we're at this point where we have to ask ourselves some tough questions. Can a world that's so interconnected with economies so intertwined really afford another large-scale war?
That's the big question, isn't it?
The potential for destruction is almost too much to comprehend.
It really is. It's a sobering thought.
It is.
The globalized nature of our world means that the consequences of a conflict,
of a large-scale conflict,
would be felt everywhere.
We've seen glimpses of this with the war in Ukraine.
Right. Disruptions to supply chains,
energy shortages,
economic instability, and a larger conflict.
Yeah.
It would just magnify these effects.
It's like we're all standing on this incredibly fragile web.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
And one wrong move could send shockwaves across the whole system.
It's a powerful metaphor, and it underscores the need.
The need for what?
For caution. For diplomacy.
Right.
For finding ways to de-escalate tensions.
Instead of escalating them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Build bridges, not walls.
But isn't there a risk of appearing weak?
There's always that risk.
If we would focus too much on diplomacy.
Yeah, some people would say that.
Like that strength and military power.
Right, like that's the only way.
Are the only things that will deter aggression?
Yeah, that's a common argument.
It is.
It's often used to justify...
And justify what?
Increased military spending.
Okay.
And a more assertive foreign policy.
So they're saying we need to be more aggressive.
In a way, yeah, but it's based on a flawed premise.
What's that?
The idea that strength...
Military strength.
Yeah, is the only kind of strength that matters.
So you're saying there are other forms of strength?
Absolutely.
Like what?
The strength of our alliances.
Oh, no.
The strength of our economies. The strength of our values.
They're all important.
They're crucial. Oh. They all contribute to our overall security.
And diplomacy.
Yeah.
When it's done right.
Exactly. It could be a really powerful tool.
For what?
For advancing our interests and preventing conflict.
It's not easy, though, is it?
No, it's not.
It requires a willingness to listen.
To really listen.
To understand the other side's perspective.
Yeah, to see things from their point of view.
And to find common ground.
It's not about appeasement or weakness.
It's about recognizing that we're all connected.
Exactly. In a world as interconnected as ours.
Right.
We all have a stake in finding peaceful solutions.
So we all need to work together.
It requires a long-term vision. A recognition that security isn't a zero-sum game.
Meaning?
Meaning that one side winning doesn't have to mean the other side loses.
We can all win.
We can all prosper and thrive.
Yeah.
In a world where cooperation
and mutual respect.
Right, those are the guiding principles.
That sounds pretty idealistic.
It does a little bit.
Do you really think it's achievable?
In this current geopolitical climate.
Yeah, there's so much mistrust.
There is.
So much competition.
For resources.
Yeah, for power.
It's challenging.
It's a really challenging goal.
It is, and it won't be easy to achieve.
Right.
But I believe it's the only path.
The only path to what?
To a sustainable and peaceful future.
So we have to find a way.
We do. We have to start by rejecting those simplistic narratives.
Like us versus them.
Exactly. We're not enemies.
Right.
We have to recognize that our fates are intertwined.
We're all in this together.
We are.
And that means having those difficult conversations.
Yeah, the ones we don't want to have.
Challenging our own biases.
Our own assumptions.
Right, and being willing to compromise.
It's not about ignoring the threats, but it's about approaching them with a different mindset.
One that prioritizes diplomacy and cooperation.
Exactly, over confrontation and aggression.
So it's a different way of thinking.
It is. It's about recognizing that true strength lies not in our ability to inflict harm, but in our capacity for empathy, for understanding, and a willingness to build a better world for all.
So while Europe is preparing for this potential conflict, the real question is...
This is the real question.
Can we as a global community choose a different path?
That's a powerful question.
Can we break free from this cycle of fear?
And mistrust.
Yeah, that's haunted us for so long.
It's a challenge we're all facing.
It's not just Europe.
No, it's global.
It's the whole world.
It demands our attention, our courage, and our commitment to a future.
A future
where peace and cooperation aren't just aspirations.
But our reality...
That's a great note to end on.
It is. We've explored a lot today.
Yes.
From those military preparations to the anxieties and debates they've sparked.
The ethical questions.
Yeah, the philosophical questions about conflict.
It's a lot to think about.
It really is. But this is just the beginning of the conversation.
It is. We hope this deep dive has encouraged you.
You encouraged our listeners.
Yeah, to keep exploring these issues.
To stay informed.
To engage in those thoughtful discussions.
Yeah, because the future isn't set in stone.
No, it's not.
It's something we create together.
Through our choices and actions.
And our belief.
Our belief in a better world.
It's been a great discussion.
It has. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for listening.